Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Shift with Gina. I'm happy to see you, happy to be back here. We're going to look at another viral TikTok that has spread like wildfire across the internet, and it's about a trad wife horror story, cautionary tale to trad wives. And I think this is a really nice jumping off point to talk about marriage, to talk about tradition, traditional wives, traditional marriage, and how our current culture just has a lot of things mixed up when it comes to the definition of marriage and tradition and what it means to be a trad wife. And we'll talk a little bit about the importance of preparing young people for the proper marriage in order to mitigate a lot of the risks that we hear people talking about when it comes to marriage. But before we get started, today's episode is brought to you by the Shift community. So I haven't talked about this in a while, but I have a women's health group hosted on Mighty Networks. So you don't need any social media. You don't need a Facebook page. All you need is an email address. It's a health group with a pretty hefty amount of women in there now. We've got over 800 women in our group now, and we're always doing some sort of health or nutrition challenge. We have a spring bingo challenge coming up in April. We're going to be working a lot on daily movement, better nutrition, better lifestyle habits. And it's also a really great group for anyone who has weight loss goals in mind or any women who want to balance their hormones. I do a lot of exclusive content on there, like interviews with experts, OBGYNs, nutritionists, etc., on how to heal from the birth control pill, how to improve fertility. We did an entire episode with an OBGYN about the abortion pill being made available at CVS and Walgreens. So there's a lot of really great information in that group too. So if you want to join, link in the description or just go to myhealthshift.com/join. It's a wait list currently. We open up the wait list at the end of every month. So in a few days, it will be open for March. And if you sign up for the wait list, you're going to get an email. You can sign up right away. It's for women only. Sorry, men. No men allowed in our group. No boys allowed. It is a women's group. A lot of moms in there, a lot of women who aren't moms, or maybe even moms with grown-up kids who are out of the house. So lots of good stuff happening there in the Shift. Okay, let's just dive right into it. Watch this video and we shall discuss. The title of the video is Real Life Trad Wife Tragedy. Here we go.
I'm here to tell you why that whole trad wife trend is absolute bullcrap. I just got off the phone with a friend of mine who has been married for about 15 years now. Before she got married, she got a master's degree in education and a law degree. She met her husband in law school. He wanted a traditional wife. She did not take the bar, and instead they got married. He took the bar. He passed the bar. He became a lawyer, and she became a full-time housewife and later a mom. Times 5. They have 5 children. Okay, fast forward 15 years, where he has been cheating on her for years. She finally caught him red-handed. She has enough confidence and determination to say, I want a divorce, I'm done. He's walking away with a $300,000+ job that he got, by the way, from one of her mom friends in a mom group. Let's just put that aside. She has nothing. She has 2 advanced degrees, 0 experience. So are they even worthwhile? Are they even worth anything? She has nothing to show for it. And in the last 15 years, what has changed in law and in education? Probably quite a bit. So she is stuck at this crossroads of feeling like she has nothing. And before you say alimony, he is trying to screw her out of everything he possibly can. She cannot keep the house, even though she has primary custody of the children. She can't afford it. She has no job. Absolutely no job right now. And even if she did, there are 5 children. So between drop-offs and pickups at 4 different schools, she has about 3 hours in the daytime when she is not tending to children. So to any woman who is considering that the trad wife lifestyle might be it for you, I encourage you to think about this story. Remember it. And just remember that you as a woman need to have something for yourself. If anything, just for yourself. Because you absolutely never know what can happen in life, whether it be divorce, whether it be cheating, whether it be the passing away of your spouse. You have to take care of yourself and put yourself first. You can still love and support your husband and be an incredible wife who takes care of your man, but take care of yourself first.
Take care of yourself first. That's the takeaway, isn't it? This is a horror story of the trad wife lifestyle. And these videos are becoming more and more common on Twitter and TikTok. I just saw another video the other day that also went viral. It was this Mormon woman, an ex-wife, who told the story about how she got married at 19 years old and was told that a wife doesn't work. She's supposed to stay home and have children. So she had a bunch of kids, and she actually helped her husband launch more than one successful company, but in the meantime wasn't allowed to put her name on any business, on her name on, I think, even any bank accounts. She was just given an envelope of cash each month to buy groceries and things that she needed for herself and the kids. And then 15 years later, she got divorced from her husband, and now she has absolutely nothing. She says she had to live in her car. And you just see a lot more of these videos coming out. And then as these stories become more and more popular, the trad wife horror story, you see the other side. You see the men who also post videos or tell stories about how their wife just woke up one day and decided after 15 years of marriage that she didn't want to be married to him anymore. And because the family courts and the law are situated in a certain way that generally favors the woman and the wife, she took half, if not all of his money, got custody of the kids, got possession of the house, left him with nothing, and maybe even ruined his reputation along the way. And this is what you see from a lot of the red pill manosphere stuff, as a cautionary tale to tell men to not get married because this kind of stuff happens, and because women are evil and wives can just wake up one day and decide to ruin your life. And it's interesting because both of these stories kind of tell the complete opposite. On one side, it says that the man screws them over, cheats them out of alimony, and cheats the system to take advantage of the little trad wife. So she has nothing and she has to live out of her car and she gets no alimony and she can't even work. But then the other side says that it's the crazy ex-wife that manipulates the system to take advantage of the man, take every penny that he has, and take away his kids forever so he can't see them. So there's just a lot of fear mongering going on online right now when it comes to marriage. But I will say, just on a human level, it's really hard to hear these stories. I don't think anybody wants to see marriages crumble like this and see the destruction of divorce that causes kids and couples to really crumble and fall. I mean, I don't think it almost concerns me when I see these stories online and you see people who like laugh at them and almost enjoy the person's pain. It's like, these are real people on the other side of the camera, whether it's a man or a woman, an ex-husband or an ex-wife. And I don't know. I don't think it's a laughing matter, but I think it's worth breaking this down a little bit. So in this video, she says this story is a warning to all the trad wives out there. The video was titled Trad Wife Story Tragedy, and we see the word trad being thrown around yet again. You know, I have done many episodes in the past about the trad trend and how it's really nothing more than a trend rather than something that's rooted in true tradition. Because what's her definition of a trad wife? Her definition is the wife doesn't work and stays home with the kids, and the husband goes to work outside of the home. That's it. The end. That's just the definition of trad wife. You see, trad really means nothing, because then you see these huge pockets of the internet that use Ballerina Farm and Nara Smith as the ultimate trad wife representation. You have political pundits and commentators and articles written about Ballerina Farm and women like Nara Smith, calling them the ultimate trad wife and how they're ushering in this new trad trend. Why are they considered trad to these people? Because they're pretty, they wear dresses, and they cook from scratch meals for their multiple children and their husband. So now all these people say that Ballerina Farm is pushing forward the idea of the trad wife and the trad agenda. But in reality, both of these women are working mothers. They've never called themselves trad. They do beauty pageants. They have modeling contracts. They have a business they run from home, a successful business. They work while they mother, and they work while they take care of the family. So you see already two opposing definitions of trad. So trad means everything, which means it means nothing. So if we're actually going to talk about true traditional marriage, it actually doesn't have anything to do with whether a woman is working or not, because this whole new trad thing is all about whether the wife stays home or not. That's usually what it hinges on, or if the wife cooks a lot of pretty meals and makes things from scratch and takes care of the husband and loves her kids. It's just this general sort of hot pot of nothingness. So we need to talk about what true traditional marriage actually is. Not the trad trend. The concept of marriage as we know it today of true marriage came from one place, Christ. When Christ was on earth, he delivered a radical, controversial message about marriage. It was a crazy message. It was that the husband was to lay down his life for his wife the same way that Christ laid down his life for the church. And the wife was to submit to the husband. Now, this was a radical idea at the time because prior to that, women and wives and children as well were really viewed as nothing more than property and economic units to be owned and perhaps even controlled. So the idea of a loving marriage where the wife was to be cherished and valued by the husband, yeah, that all came from Christianity. And I know that's not what atheists and feminists want to hear, but that's the truth. The marriage, as we know it today, the modern sense of a husband should love his wife, husband should sacrifice for his wife, and in turn, the wife would submit to him and commit to him. That whole idea of a loving marriage in which a woman is not viewed as property, that came from Christianity. So when we hear these videos referring to trad wife or trad marriage, you have to realize that we're not actually speaking the same language as these people. Because the term trad does not actually refer to the traditional marriage from which the marriage that we kind of think of today comes from. Even down to the idea that the woman is not supposed to work at all, that's now considered trad. Traditionally, before industrialization, the husband had an enterprise or owned land, and he and his entire family, including the wife and the children, contributed to this enterprise or this land, and they helped him maintain it. They helped him bring in profit. They helped him build this legacy and build this business. And so the idea that the wife is not allowed to work outside of the home or outside of the marriage is a very new modern concept that's rooted in the 1950s post-war era that is actually based on a lot of advertisements and marketing campaigns meant to sell new appliances like fridges and dishwashers to stay-at-home moms. So all that to say, when you are being fear-mongered about the trad wife life and the traditional marriage, remember that most of these people are probably not practicing a traditional marriage. So that's why I think we need to better define and teach what a traditional marriage is and what a traditional marriage should look like to younger people in order to set them up for success. Because there's just a lot of confusion right now on what marriage and trad wife and traditional marriage are. Today, marriage just means you love someone and you want to spend the rest of your life with them. That's nice, and that should be a part of marriage, of course, but that this is the end all be all for most people when it comes to modern marriages. It's nice and all, but it's just not enough in many cases, to be honest, which is one of the reasons why there are so many people getting divorced, because they just think that, oh, I love this person, I want to stay with them forever. And that's sort of it when it comes to marriage. We need to start approaching marriage like we used to, which is a sacrament given to us by God. It's not a little love contract or a self-growth experience where you grow together and learn and change together. No, it is a sacrament, something very sacred and mystical given to us by God. And if we teach more men and women to look for a future spouse with this in mind, to look for a husband or a wife who wants to marry with a higher purpose, to raise moral families and to honor God through marriage and family, we will have many more successful marriages. Yes, of course, there is a risk in marriage, just like there's a risk in anything in life. For example, people who refuse to marry and are single forever with no kids, they actually have a much higher risk of being unhealthier, being unhappier, being lonelier. Just like people who get married have a risk of their spouse cheating on them or leaving them. But rather than scare people away from the institution of marriage because of these risks, we need to teach them how to better mitigate those risks in smart ways and how to better pick a spouse from a young age. And the first way to do that is to practice a traditional marriage in the context of the church, to root your marriage in Christ and commit yourself not only to each other, but to Jesus and his eternal promise of salvation and sanctification. I know this is, again, not what atheists and feminists want to hear, because we've been taught that marriage should be an egalitarian institution. It should be an equal thing. It's not really about equal between husband and wife. Marriage was made to honor God. And that's really one of the reasons, the top reason that we see so many divorces today is because people just approach marriage as a love contract. I love you so much. Oh, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And that's just sort of it. I want to show you this very short clip from Father Josiah Trenum.
God is the author of marriage. Where do we find marriage? In paradise, fashioned by the hand of God. As such, marriage is pre-political. It's not the daughter or creature of the state, and therefore cannot be manipulated, defined, or morphed by fallen man. It is from God. God's institution is not to be blamed for the failures of men. And one of the great tragedies of our time is that so many, because of the failures of people, have given up the greatness of marriage itself. God is the author of marriage. Where do we find marriage? In paradise, fashioned by the hand of God. As such, marriage is pre-political. It's not the daughter or creature of the state, and therefore cannot be manipulated, defined, or morphed by fallen man. It is from God. God's institution is not to be blamed for the failures of men. And one of the great tragedies of our time is that so many, because of the failures of people, have given up the greatness of marriage itself.
I love that. This is a clip from his YouTube video called Marriage is God's. That's the title of the video. Marriage is God's. It's a very simple concept, but it completely changes the way that we approach our marriage and the way that we treat our spouse. And that's where you can see that the term trad wife trend actually means nothing. It doesn't really mean anything, because when you approach the institution of marriage, the traditional and the spiritual way that Christ intended, the risk of these horror stories happening to you become much, much lower. I'm not saying that Christians don't cheat or don't make mistakes. Of course they do. But if you are a practicing Orthodox Christian husband or wife who is regularly participating in the sacraments, confession, receiving Eucharist, and you're involved in church life and you seek counseling and regular pastoral care from your priest, you are constantly aware of your sinful nature and what triggers in your environment could cause you to fall into this sinful nature. And so you significantly mitigate the risk of your marriage crumbling and mitigate the risk of someone cheating. Again, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it mitigates many, many risks. And this is why so many people are struggling with marriages today, because we don't see it as a way to honor God. We just see it as an earthly concept of love and affection, which is part of it. Of course, our marriage should involve love and affection for one another, but it is not the end all be all of our marriage. If we set our sights on what marriage is meant to be, this sacrament, a much higher calling for God, from God and for God, then when you approach it that way and you become a practicing Christian who really sees marriage as part of your salvation. This is something I hear a lot in the Orthodox Church. We really believe that the way that you approach your marriage and the way that you treat your spouse is part of your sanctification. It's part of your salvation. Now, I want to go back to this woman's point in the TikTok. She wants wives to protect themselves in a marriage, to always have some kind of job or money to fall back on just in case, right? She says, you have to live for yourself first. I completely disagree with the fact that you have to live primarily for yourself as a wife or as a husband. That's the wrong way to look at it. But is it bad advice to tell wives and even husbands maybe to have some sort of, what's the word? Not backup plan, but I guess some sort of protection? I'll just tell you what I was taught by my mother. And I was speaking to quite a few people in my DMs on Instagram who said that our parents' generation taught them something very similar. My mom was a very traditional wife. I mean, still is. She quit her job when I was very young. She quit a really good job. She was a clerk at the San Diego courthouse, and a lot of people thought she was crazy for quitting her job because she had maternity leave. And when she went back to work, the judge would let her use his private chambers to pump breast milk so that she could still keep the supply up and bring it home to me. And when I was very, very little, it's actually very similar to my story. When I was very little, she was like, I can't do this anymore. So I was a very newborn infant baby, and she quit to stay home with me and to raise me. And throughout my whole life, as long as I can remember, my mom would get up at 4 a.m. in the morning with my dad, especially when he was still a blue collar worker. And she would make sure his lunch was all packed. She would help him get out the door. And she's, as a Christian mom, she really embodied a lot of what traditional marriage should look like. But my mom did always tell me that nobody is perfect and anybody can make a mistake and anybody can cheat, for example. She always told me that you should love people and you should commit to your husband, but you should never believe that it could never happen to you. And she always taught me to be fully committed to my husband one day. But she said there's nothing wrong with saving a little money on the side and having something for yourself, because God forbid something happens to you, not only cheating and divorce, but sickness and God forbid death. She always said it's good to have a little something saved up for emergencies. And that emergency could include infidelity. She was always very practical about this, and sure, maybe a little skeptical, but she was at least very practical about this. I don't think this is necessarily bad advice. I would actually love to hear what you guys think. Maybe this is just my upbringing, and it's just what I was taught. Maybe you'll disagree with me. I think it's fine for wives to have a little side gig. And I think it's even better if you sort of plan with your husband like an emergency fund. Maybe you have maybe you do have a separate bank account that your name is on as the primary holder, but maybe your husband's name is on as a secondary, and you put a little emergency funds away just in case the husband is sick, or in case the husband, God forbid, passes away, or maybe even in case the husband just goes down a bad road and starts to gamble or cheat or lie or whatever it might be. Nobody's husband is perfect. Nobody's wife either. Nobody is perfect and immune to sin. Nobody's marriage is immune to breaking down. So if there are small measures that you can take and a little cushion to fall back on, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, that's very different than a prenup, right? That's very different because that sort of invalidates the sacrament of marriage. And at the same time, though, your primary focus should be working on the marriage and doing everything you can to prevent the marriage from breaking down. And you shouldn't live in constant fear and constantly look at the back door for an escape. But I don't think it's necessarily bad advice to tell spouses to be like, just prepare for an emergency just in case. I don't know. I would actually love to hear what you guys have to say, but I do think that the biggest problem here, like I said, is that marriage is not what it traditionally was meant to be and traditionally defined as. So you see a lot of these trad wife horror stories come out and you're like, yeah, but how do we know that couple was actually traditional? Just because the wife didn't work, that makes them trad? So we need to be very careful about what we're teaching young people. We have to prepare them to find a spouse who wants that higher purpose and higher meaning in their marriage, who wants to share the sacrament of marriage, not just someone who wants to get married and I love you forever. That's part of it, but it's certainly not all of it. And I think one of the things we're doing wrong is we're not preparing the younger generation to take marriage seriously. So that's all I got for today. That's enough on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Should we be sharing these trad wife horror stories with young people, both young men and women? Are they useful, or are they just fear mongering that doesn't prepare people for what's ahead? Let me know. Bye, everybody.